Hello. If you're watching this video, then I'm guessing you've probably seen the movie WarGames at some point or another, maybe multiple times if you're like me. The movie contains numerous iconic scenes that nearly 40 years later are as memorable as they were when the movie was released in 1983. The WOPR, or War Operation Plan Response, plays a major role in the movie, ultimately setting the stage for the lesson that computer processing can't always replace human discretion. The WOPR interface itself makes numerous appearances throughout the movie, and is so captivating that if you look around, there are even a couple WOPR simulators around online. But no offense to their creators, they're not that realistic. And during a recent discussion with someone about the movie, I thought, why not create an actual fully fledged simulation of the WOPR system? And so that's exactly what I did. Of course, it didn't happen overnight. The complete system comprises around 2,000 lines of code, which took about 4 days to write. And apart from 2 or 3 minor omissions from the system, I've set up a system that allows you to not only use the WOPR interactively, but in fact do everything, more or less, that David Lightman does from a computer terminal in WarGames throughout the entire movie. So finally, the system is now publicly available, and now you too can play with it if you wish. So how does one access the WOPR? If you're ready, you can check out this webpage, bbs.interlink.cf, which has everything you need to know to connect to the system. Now, it does say you can access the BBS right here on the webpage itself. I don't recommend that for accessing the WOPR, just because the way this is set up, it doesn't work great when a real-time connection is necessary. It's great for accessing simple text menus and things like that, but you'll want to connect to the system directly from your computer, at least for the WOPR. Well, just like in 1983 in WarGames, you'll need to use a terminal or terminal emulator to connect to the system. The easiest way is through Telnet, and if you're on Windows, PuTTY will get the job done. There is Telnet support in recent Windows releases, but it's disabled by default. So you may find using PuTTY simpler to do, and there's even a portable version, so you don't need to install anything. And when you open it up, it'll default to SSH access, and the system does allow SSH access, as you saw on the webpage, but just choosing Telnet is probably the easier way to go. And you can do that just by clicking the Telnet option right there. So once you've gone and selected the Telnet option, you can go ahead and type in the host to connect to, which again is bbs.interlink.cf. Leave it set to the default port 23, and once you're ready, you can go ahead and click open. And then once you do that, you will be greeted with this login prompt here, which just says login with username com and password com. If you connect via SSH, I don't think it tells you this, which is why I said it's easier to connect using Telnet, especially if you're not familiar with how to connect to this system in particular. So just go ahead and log in using the credentials it provides. And then here is the main menu of this public access Unix system. It actually comprises a few BBSs. It's not really a BBS itself. But the WOPR is part of the FreakNet BBS. So you'll want to go ahead and do menu option 1. And if you're a phone freak or a telephone collector, by all means you can register for the board and then log in with your credentials. But it is available to guest users, so you can just go ahead and log in as a guest user. And then it's under the Games menu, so hit G again. And then you will be brought to the Games menu. And down here at the bottom is the WOPR. It says War Operation Plan Response via IMSI 8080, and more on that in a second. So now if you go ahead and choose option W, that will connect not directly to the WOPR, but it'll connect to the IMSI 8080, and you'll see what that looks like here. So right now you can see it's initializing and starting up. And now you get to this screen here, and it's already pre-filled, and as you can see with the command dir, you can get rid of that if you want. And Yeah, so it just says bad command if there's nothing. But if you type in dir again, as you can see, it listed it up here, and I just listed it again. And the reason it's pre-filled in for you is that way you can just execute that command when you get in here and see what options are available to you on this system. Basically, it's set up sort of like an MSI 8080. Obviously, it's quite limited here, but you can just type exit to get out of the system, and then that will drop you back to the games menu on the FreakNet BBS. And if we go back in, you can see that every time you connect, dir is pre-filled in for you, so you can just see what options are available to you. There's really not much else on this system. Yeah, and so you're pretty much restricted to these options here. And like I said, you can do everything that David Lightman did in WarGames, not just using the WOPR, but you'll remember before they connected to the WOPR, they were doing some other things on his computer. And so you can do those things here too. There's two programs here basically. So if you go to modem, it says redialing. Basically, it's connecting to the first thing that David did in WarGames, which was the Seattle Public School District DataNet. And it's saying, please log in with user password. You'll remember from WarGames, and you will need to remember from WarGames to actually use the system because everything is set up just like it was in WarGames. So you'll remember the username was pencil, and if you enter pencil, and so we can go ahead and let me see if I can get this right now. There we go. And so it'll go ahead and list courses. You might remember this iconic part of the movie where he changes his grade. And so I mentioned there were a couple omissions from this system compared to the actual system in WarGames. So here you can see it's listing his courses. One thing you can't do presently is, even though it says to change any item, move cursor to desired position and enter new value, you can't actually go ahead and change the grades. It won't let you. You'll just get garbage text like that. So you can view his grades. You can't really change them. And if you hit enter, you can get out of here. And we can pull up the other one too. And that should pull up her grades now instead. And as you can probably see by now, it's pretty much going at 300 bits per second. I'm not sure if it's exact, but the connection is somewhere around there. You'll notice that whenever it basically dials into a system, that will be the connection speed for the most part. And there we are again. Again, you can't really change anything. I mean, it's possible to do that. I can already envision how I would go about implementing that. But on its own, it would just be such an enormous undertaking. That would have been an additional hours on end, and it didn't really seem like a terribly important part here. So if there's demand for it in the future, I'll consider going in and actually allowing you to change grades. But for the time being, it didn't seem like a huge oversight. So if you just hit enter here, that'll basically exit that system. And then you get dropped back here to the main menu again. If you type, or not help, if you type dir, that'll list everything available. So basically modem.com, that will just redial into the Seattle Public School District computer. Everything else is in dialer.com, as you can see. And if we load that program, this menu you didn't see in the movie, but it's basically just a toggle that allows you to go between two different things. And so if we type run here, you'll see this familiar screen from the movie, and it's already pre-filled in. So there's not really much to fill in here. But you'll remember this is the war dialer that David uses to call the computers in Sunnyvale and check for carrier tones so we can hack into that gaming company's computer and play their new game before it's released. This is the program that he used to do that. And if you hit enter here, it'll start scanning numbers basically. And it's already going on to the next one. So if you sit here and just let this run, it'll go on for a long time. So you'll just want to exit this at this point. This is really just more for, taking a look, not actually doing anything terribly useful. But if you hit enter, it'll say numbers for which carrier tones were detected. So this is the menu that pops up after he interrupts the scanning to see what numbers it's gotten so far. And these are the numbers that you see in the movie. Obviously, the 311 area code that's not even a valid North American area code. But again, everything from the system is verbatim from the movie WarGames. So if you see a typo or something that looks weird, again, this is just everything that was in the movie. So it allows you to page through the different numbers here. And so we'll just start with the first one. And if you remembered from WarGames, the first system he got was a bank. And he didn't actually log into that, so we won't either. We'll just get out of here. And that will hang up now. And then we can dial the second number here. And this one he did interact with a little bit. And I believe if you do either 1 or 3, you'll get into the menu or to the page that he was using. So these are just the values from the movie. I hit tab, which is why that big indent appeared there. But if we just go ahead and keep going here, so obviously the dates are all in 83, but again, this is just the exact information from the movie. So and then once you exit from there, you just get back to this menu here. And I believe to exit from here, you can just press enter. It's worth mentioning that it is enter to exit from there. To exit from this menu, you need to press Q, because if you press enter, it'll just connect to the system that's highlighted, which is not what you want if you're trying to exit. So if you hit, I think either Q or X will work, but if you hit Q, like you were typing quit or exit, that would disconnect and bring you back here. And then to get back to the dialer, you don't have to actually run a scan every time you want to connect to those numbers. That's why this menu is here. You can run to bring up that whole war dialing thing, or if you just want to go straight to the numbers, just type view, and that'll get you right to the numbers. So that way, if you want to connect to a system, you can do that without going through that whole scanning phase. So far, everything we've done has actually been completely unrelated to the WOPR itself. And they've just been other things throughout the movie. You'll remember the WOPR was just one of the results that came up for the numbers that he was scanning. And so we've done the first and the second option. Now, if we go to the third option here and try that one, you should see something that looks somewhat familiar. And here you just get the mysterious logon prompt. And you can do all the things that David tried doing when he was, I think he typed help logon or something like that. Yeah, so if we do list games now, or actually he tried help games first. Let me just try to go through things as David did. And then you get back to the logon prompt. If you try entering something bogus, like David does when he first connects to the system, then it will kick you out here, and then you'll have to redial into it. But that's no biggie, because once you get disconnected from there, you just end up back here. You can just press enter right away to get back in there. But henceforth, everything that we do on this system is actually part of WOPR. So the correct logon is Joshua, if you didn't know that. And it says, greetings, Professor Falcon. So I'm just going to go ahead and interact with it. I'm trying to remember David's lines as best I can. Of course, it doesn't have to be exact, but it'll respond the way it's supposed to. So there is that iconic line from the movie, which is referenced in so many other places today. I'd love to play a game, actually. And so it goes ahead and draws the map and gives us our menu options. The map here is not quite on the same level as the one used in the movie, but it's pretty good for a terminal, if I say so myself. And let's just play for the Soviet Union. And he chose, let's see, Las Vegas and Seattle, because it totally makes sense to nuke your hometown. And then it just will give the trajectory headings here. Usually it is a little bit faster. I can tell it's noticeably slower than it usually is when I connect to it. And I'm pretty sure that's just because I'm recording this right now. So if you connect to this on your system, it should be a bit faster than that. This looks a little bit slower, actually, than 300 bits per second. And at this point, it'll just wait for some sort of input. So if I just hit enter here, so now we're at the point where they've hung up the game, and now they realize, okay, actually maybe that wasn't a game after all. And at this point, Joshua calls him back. Basically, the computer calls him back, and once he puts his phone in the acoustic coupler, he's greeted with this. And we say, I am not Falcon. Falcon is dead. So here's one of the more ominous points in the movie. And this is the last he interacts with the WOPR before he's basically hauled away by the military. And when he gets to Noriad at Cheyenne Mountain and he gets access to a terminal there, this is what he's greeted with. And so he just logs in again using the Joshua logon. And he starts interacting with him again. Okay, and so that's the end of that there. Well, that's certainly interesting information. And that's pretty much the last option, or the last part of this experience right here. This is, of course, right before he's basically hauled away by security and put back in that holding room. And if we get out of here, so here is a big shift, pretty much. The next time you see the WOPR in the movie, they've already basically set a launch on these missiles, and so you see changes locked out, access denied, and several people trying to try getting into the system, but everybody's locked out, of course. So even when McKittrick tries going in here, the WOPR rejects his logon. Nobody can get in at this point anymore, pretty much. And the text is messed up here. That's just because I hit enter when I wasn't supposed to, and it'll do things like that if you press keys randomly. But at this point, it's just brute forcing the nuclear codes, just like at the end of the movie, and it's getting a bit faster at this now. So you'll see some of the numbers here are already locked in, like 4 and 1. And with today's processing power, this happens a lot faster than it did in 1983. Looks like just two digits are left now. And once this part is done here, once it gets the code, it'll automatically proceed to the next part here. Should be done any second. But you will notice every time you come here and do this, it's different every time in terms of how it obtains the code. But it's got the code now, and so it's proceeding to launch the missiles, which is not good. So now at this part in the movie, they're basically trying to stop it from launching the missiles, and they can't really do anything. They're locked out of the system completely. And then David has the brilliant idea to play games. And so if we go ahead, and as soon as it's done, if we go ahead and we list games, if you try doing anything else, which, I mean, yeah, it's rejecting everything at this point. But if you go ahead and you list games, it'll go ahead and it'll list games as before. And just like in the movie, well, we'll get to that. So, I think they tried playing chess, I believe, first, but again, these are all the same screens in the movie. They're not able to play chess or any of the other games actually. If they try global thermonuclear war, they can't do anything there either. And the only thing that works is the only thing here that's not listed, which is tic-tac-toe. You do need the dashes between tic-tac-toe. And we can go ahead here and this is one of the other omissions that I mentioned. There were a couple omissions from the whole overall WarGames experience. And one of those is right here. If you actually try doing a one or two player game, it'll prompt you for X and O, but then it won't actually let you play a game. I could have set that up as well. At least the one player game against the computer. The thing there again was just time and getting it set up correctly. You also on the FreakNet BBS, you can't actually play tic-tac-toe against the computer, but I found it's relatively easy, and it didn't seem realistic to put a winnable tic-tac-toe game in this spot here, because that just wouldn't make any sense. But the idea is it ends in a stalemate here. And you can use numerals or you can type it out like he does in the movie, but if you want the computer to play itself, it will start doing that here. And so it goes through the same process that you see again in WarGames, and as it learns, it'll get faster and faster here. It should get faster and faster here. This will go on for a minute, but it should be done soon. And it looks like it's done learning now. And now it proceeds straight into basically attempting to launch the nuclear missiles. Again, just determining the best strategy to use. And this was actually one of the more interesting parts, I thought, at least in implementing this. And some of these strategy names are just very strange to see the least, as I found when I was going through them. So I had to manually input them all in here. And these are all the scenarios from the movie, pretty much. And as you can see, some of these have very interesting names. There are other articles online about the scenarios that they chose and their names, and just how strange some of them are. But you can see they're just going to roll through here. It looks like that's it. And then finally we get to the very last part of their interaction with the WOPR, which is right after that. It just comes back. And here's one of the other iconic lines in the movie. A strange game. The only winning move is not to play. As with so many things in life. And that is pretty much it for this. If you proceed after that, you will just get back to that war dialer screen, and I just hit enter an extra time, so now I'm connecting back to the system, but I can just get out of that here by pressing enter, and it'll reject my credentials. So that's basically the WOPR in a nutshell. I tried highlighting all the big aspects of it that were important as you go through there, but that's pretty much everything you see in the movie WarGames. Again, through that particular option there, you get access to the WOPR, and then there's also the other components of the system that are other things that David Lightman does in the movie WarGames, which you can access here from this menu, which is basically the computer that he was using. You can just type commands and get access to things. And if you need help at any time, you can just use dir to list the programs in the directory. So that's pretty much it for this video. That was everything that I wanted to demonstrate here. If you have any comments or feedback or questions or any kind of inquiry about this project or the system, you can feel free to leave a comment below, and I'll try getting back to you. Otherwise, if you're on this system presently, another thing you can do is if you exit out of the Inside 8080 system, basically, and you exit games, exit the FreakNet BBS, and you go to you're all the way back here at the main public access Unix system menu. If you go to system information, which is just 0, and you go to 0 again for general inquiries, you can leave us a comment here, and you can telephone number and internet ID are optional, but you can go through here and leave your information here as well directly on the system. And if you have any kind of inquiry, we can get back to you with information about that. I didn't actually leave a valid inquiry, but that's another way that you can do that. So thanks for watching, and hope you find this WOPR and IMSITE 8080 system enjoyable and enjoyable to use, I guess. It was definitely a lot of work putting it together, but it was definitely a fun project, and it was something that was interesting and enjoyable to do. Again, if you have any inquiries, any questions or comments about the project, let us know. If you find a bug somewhere, I did some extensive bug testing, but if you find something, then let us know and we'll address that. So that's it for today.